Have you ever looked at your dog and just wondered, what is actually going on in that furry little head? Well, you are not alone. For years, we've all had that feeling that they get us, that they understand more than they let on. And guess what? A couple of groundbreaking studies are pretty much proving us right, revealing just how deeply they understand not only our world, but our words too. So let's dive in. So let's get right to it. When you're talking to your dog, asking, who's a good boy? Or telling them to go get your ball, what's really happening? Are they just picking up on your happy, excited tone of voice, or do they actually understand the words you're saying? That is the exact question these new studies wanted to answer. Okay, so to figure out how they process our words, we kind of have to back up a step and look at how they process their world. And it turns out, it goes way beyond just what things look or smell like. New research is showing they can organize and categorize the objects around them in a way that is, well, surprisingly sophisticated. Now, the big sciencey term for this is functional categorization. I know, it sounds a little intimidating, but the idea behind it is actually super simple. It's the ability to group things together based on their job or their purpose, not just what they look like. And for a dog's brain, that is a massive cognitive leap. We tend to think dogs are pretty simple, like, oh, it's round, so it must be a ball, right? But what this research is showing is, wow, it's so much more abstract. They can actually categorize by function. So think about it. A rope, a rubber ring, and a fluffy squeaky toy look totally different. But in your dog's mind, they can all get filed away in the same mental drawer labeled things we play tug of war with. And one of the lead researchers, Claudia Fugaza, had this perfect analogy for it. She said it's like how a person could see a traditional hammer and a big rock and call them both hammer, because, hey, you can use both for the same function. That's exactly the kind of smart connection these dogs are making. So you're probably wondering, how on earth did they figure this out? Well, the cool part is, it wasn't some crazy sterile lab training. Owners just played with their dogs like they always do, creating these little mental categories for pull toys versus fetch toys. Then, here's the kicker. They brought in totally new toys the dogs had never seen before, and with no words, no hints from the owner, the dogs got it. They understood the concept of the game, not just the specific toy. Okay, so that's pretty mind-blowing, right? Dogs are conceptual thinkers. But what does that have to do with language? Well, this is where it gets really interesting. Let's jump to the second study, which gets to the heart of it. Are they just hearing our happy or angry tone, or are they actually hearing our words? So to test this, scientists had to get pretty clever. They put the owner in the room, right? But they had them wear noise-canceling headphones and stare at a wall. Sounds weird, I know, but it was to make sure they couldn't accidentally give the dog any cues, like a glance or a smile. The owner's voice was just played from a speaker. That way, the dog was reacting only to what it heard. When we talk, it isn't like we pause between every single word. It's just a constant stream of sound. Being able to pull individual words out of that stream is a really tough job for the brain. The official term is speech segmentation. For us humans, it's kind of like the cocktail party effect, how you can hear your name being said across a crowded, noisy room. The big question was, can dogs do that too? So here's how they tested it. They had the owners read this super long, kind of boring text, but, and this is the sneaky part, they hid specific phrases inside it. And they had the owners say them in two totally different ways. First, in just a flat, monotone, reading a book out loud voice. And second, well, you know the one. That high-pitched, super excited, baby talk voice we all use. Yep, scientists even have a name for it, dog-directed speech. And the results? Whoa. First up, the monotone voice. Even when the owner's voice was totally flat with zero excitement, the dogs still perked up and reacted way more when they heard a real phrase they knew compared to some random words. This is a game changer. It proves they're not just surfing the emotional wave of your voice, they're actually picking out the specific words. All right, so what about that baby talk voice? Well, as you'd probably guess, just using that excited tone got their attention immediately, even with nonsense words. But here's the real insight. The biggest reaction of all, the absolute peak, that came when the excited voice was paired with the words they actually understood. So what does that tell us? The tone is like an attention grabber. It gets them to tune in, but the words are what deliver the actual message. Okay, let's step back and put these two big ideas together. On one hand, we have dogs that can group things by what they're for. And on the other, they can pull specific words out of our sentences. So what does this all really mean for what's going on inside their mind? So let's just recap the big takeaways here. We've learned that dogs are thinking conceptually about the objects in their lives. They're grouping things by what they do, and they are true listeners, able to separate the actual words we say from the happy-go-lucky tone we say them in. They process both, for sure, but they absolutely know the difference. And look, this isn't just about your dog being able to do a cool trick. This is so much bigger than that. What this research does is it fundamentally changes the way we should think about our relationship with them, about the conversation that we're having with them literally every single day. And this might be the most profound part of it all. Think about those two skills, categorizing things by function and picking words out of a stream of speech. You know who else learns like that? Human babies. It's literally the foundation of how we learn language. The fact that we're seeing this in dogs, well, it suggests a deep, shared cognitive root way back in our evolutionary past. So, the next time you're chatting away to your dog, just remember this. They aren't just hearing a happy sound. They're trying to parse your words. They are really, truly listening. And that leaves us with a pretty big question, doesn't it? Knowing that they understand so much more than we ever gave them credit for, what do you really want to tell them?